Anyone who does not carry his cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. None of you can be my disciple unless you give up all your possessions. These words of Jesus from today's Gospel are challenging and confronting words for all of us. And perhaps today, as we formally install Father Grant as your parish priest, they are particularly challenging for him. The life of discipleship is not easy for anyone. The following of Jesus, the taking of Jesus at his word when he tells us that he is our way and our truth and our life, is difficult in a society and in a world which would encourage us to walk a different way, to commit ourselves to a different truth, to live a different kind of life to the one Jesus holds out to us. Indeed, why would we want to follow someone who tells us that we must hate our father and mother and brother and sister and children, and indeed our own lives? What are we to make of someone who tells us that we must give up every possession we have if we wish to be his disciples? These things don't only seem extreme to us, they seem in fact to be cruel. Is this what Jesus is really asking of us? The answer, of course, is no. Jesus does not ask us to hate our parents or our family, or to live in destitution with no possessions to our name. What he does ask of us, however, is to be ready to give up whatever we must in order to live according to the way he sets out for us. This becomes clear in another story in the Gospel, where a young man asked Jesus what he, the young man, must do in order to inherit eternal life. Jesus responds by telling the young man that he must keep the commandments. And when the young man says to Jesus that he has kept them all since his earliest years, the Gospel tells us that Jesus looked at this young man and loved him. It was then that Jesus presented this young man with a challenge. If you wish to have the fullness of life, he tells him, then go and sell everything you own, give the money to the poor, and come and follow me. The Gospel tells us that when the young man heard these words, his face fell, and he walked away sadly, because he was a person of great wealth. This story which at first sight seems to confirm today's words from Jesus that we must give up all our possession, is really not about wealth at all. Rather, it is about whatever it is in our lives which is stopping us from giving our complete yes to whatever God is asking of us. For the rich man, the problem was his attachment to his money. But for us, the problem might be our attachment to something else. To our good name, for example, or to our certainty about the righteousness of our own opinions, or perhaps to our desire to control and dominate others, or perhaps our selfishness, which prevents us from reaching out generously to those who need us. The challenge of each of us is to have the insight and honesty to recognize what it is that is holding us back from living the life to which God is calling us, and then have the courage to do something about it. This readiness to be ready to respond to God's will, no matter the cost, is of course exactly the way Jesus lived his life. It might seem strange to say this, but this is why Jesus is called a priest. Throughout history, priests are people who offer sacrifice in order to draw themselves and others closer to God. The unique and special thing about Jesus is that the sacrifice he offered was the sacrifice of himself, of his whole world life, not just at the end when he was dying on the cross, but from the very beginning. Jesus' whole life was an act of self-giving, to God so that he might bring others closer to God. This is really at the heart of what being a priest is all about in our Christian understanding, and it is why we speak of ourselves as priestly people. Our Catholic tradition teaches us that there is only one priest, Jesus himself. But our tradition also tells us we are drawn into a close and intimate relationship with Jesus through our baptism, our confirmation, and through our reception of the Eucharist. United to him, and therefore sharing in his priestly identity, we are indeed a priestly people. We belong to him, we are part of him, and we live our life in imitation of him. We show our priestly identity by giving our lives a gift for others, just as he did. To live as Jesus did is not, of course, an easy thing to do. We need the help of God's grace, and so, from among us, God chooses some men and calls them to give their whole lives to him and to his people in a special way, in order to help all of us live truly priestly lives in union with Christ. In our Catholic tradition, we call these men priests, because they share in the priestly heart of Christ, in a special way, so that in and through them, Christ can lead us to another life, our priestly identity.